or somebody gave me pushback, and then I called them the N-word in response to it, and then kind of backed up and was like, well, you could see how I was emotional, right?
I'm not gonna lie, being called a liar and being said that Trump was in my ear.
Oh, ready for the dunk? Straight raid. Bad faith. Ready for the dunk already?
Very condescending, very dismissive, treating me like a retard.
I think we can all agree that Aaron is extremely toxic and vitriolic.
Listen, we need to bring some evidence into the equation here because I've got a tweet from yourself here, CounterPoints. It reads as follows. But then you're admitting that you're
biased to my tribe.
Right.
Yes, I'm biased to my tribe. I literally look at the right and I am appalled by them. I'm repulsed by them. I think they're evil.
Are you saying it should have been less of a pussy? Is that what you're saying? Say it plainly.
That's what she said.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Of course, the man of the hour, CounterPoints. Hello.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, mate? What's been going on?
Oh, you know, just showing up for my hourly dick flattening. You know.
Well, look,
I'll
mate.
go easy on you.
Okay. Look,
Thank you, Straighteraid.
there was no pressure applied here. I'm just bringing in people to have a conversation. Okay.
Listen, can I just say, if the takeaway is that I didn't argue my points well, I got triggered and I was rude, but some people were rude to me as well, and my triggeredness is explainable, if not correct. That's a perfectly fine takeaway that I'm happy to live with.
Okay. I mean I think that probably is. I don't know how much of my stuff you've watched here, but that's basically what I said. I think. Because it seems
somebody said I can't watch my own cringe, so that's
okay.
part of the problem.
It seems like you having been a copper is something that's quite important to you, right? That's my understanding. Which is
yeah, and you know, Straighteraid's here or whatever. So up until yesterday, I did think it was Sherry who called me a hall monitor, not Straighteraid.
But
so
it was
basically,
me.
Yeah, but it was Straighteraid. So I'm gonna meme that into the video a little bit, but basically, yeah, I think while my machine gunning of the C word was perhaps not the greatest, I did think that not only were my professional credentials basically being mocked, well, I thought it was all the same person. So that's
Wow,
my
Connor,
fault.
are you saying that you think
Misogynist.
all women sound the same?
Exactly. That's my fault for being misogynist in the first place.
Well,
No, I didn't like that people were saying in Reddit threads and tweets that I saw that you were like cynically invoking your on the field experience, because I didn't think that was what happened. I did agree that, like, even just to say like, oh, you emotionally invoked it, I'm not trying, that sounds like so condescending also. It's just like the tensions escalate very quickly. So I wasn't surprised that it went there, but what the antecedent to that was that Cherry had just asked, or she said to you, I think you should concede on like being an investigator, no? And I felt like if somebody else had asked that, there's a universe that's not too far off where you would have been like, oh wait, let me clarify, here's actually how my experience as a cop and my professional career is directly relevant to being able to like sort through this information better than like your average normie would be able to. But instead you were like, fuck you, dude, somebody died in my arms. And it's like, I don't think that she knew that or was like trying to come for that. I think she just genuinely was ignorant about like your experience and didn't see how it was relevant to what we were discussing.
Sure, and that's fair. But can you understand how, if I thought that he had called me a hall monitor 4 minutes before, how I would think that question was like sarcastic?
Yeah, totally. That's why like it made sense to it makes sense to me now. If you believe that she was the one who made the quip when I did, then I could see how it went from that. But I didn't understand that you didn't realize it was me who had said that to you and not her.
Right.
So I was like, in response to her asking this question, she gets called a disgusting cunt. Like, how is that? I don't understand how it like got here. But if you think it was me, then it makes sense. Although I will have to say, I think if you had called me a disgusting cunt, or like the rant had been like, put towards me, I would have understood it, I guess, slightly more, but not too much more than that. Because again, like I mentioned in Chud's chat, like in response to like some pushback and stuff like that, I think the gender-based insults are kind of unwarranted, especially if she didn't make a gender-based attack at you first. It would be like if I, gave some pushback, or somebody gave me pushback, And then I called him the N-word in response to it, and then kind of backed up and was like, well, you could see how I was emotional, right? Like it's just, it could be just strange that like that's where you go first, I guess.
No, true. And basically,
You're roboting a bit. I don't know what's going on, mate, but you got some robots thing going on.
yeah, I'm driving around.
Okay.
I can, if y'all want to talk for a minute, I can just mute myself, and when I'm in a better connection, I can come back.
Sure. All I was going to say is, you know, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. I think the thing that I noted was like, and I don't know if this is something that CounterPoints picked up in the moment or whatever, but it just seemed like everyone was just taking a fucking little bite out of him. You know, Mindwaves was like having a bit of a dig at him. Supreme was being fairly good faith, and then he started to get the boot in a bit. You know, and it just seemed like he was against a bunch of people, and there was a mixture of people arguing in good faith and people being kind of shitty to him, and it was him kind of biting back, you know? But sure. I mean, the thing is with the word cunt is like, because you see it as more of a gender-based insult, like specifically, right?
I know, I was about to say, I know you bongers are basically greeting each other with cunt, so it's not going to be the same over there. But like in the United States, I actually think it might be one of the few words that could actually still shock the American mind when you hear it as like thrown out as an insult. Most other insults are pretty much par for the course at this point.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, am I roboting still?
A bit, but we'll do our best. Go on.
Yeah, so basically, I understand that that's probably over the top, but also I'm kind of coming to a place right now where I just don't care about like, pearl clutching. Also, I feel like I've done enough work in the space or whatever that, if you, to be honest, the main thing that bugs me is just like the total lack of respect for me in the space, despite having been it for 2 years, and people that I respect not reciprocating. That was my main problem.
Well, it's not personal, Connor. Like I mentioned that I felt like if BX Bullet or Rob Noor or Brittany from Politically Provoked had been in the conversation and it was a 1v5 in the exact same way, and they were advancing the same type of arguments or what people are calling a conspiracy theory effectively, I don't think there would have been quite as much sympathy. Maybe you believe that you should have more charitability and sympathy extended to you in your particular case because, like you said, you're an established creator. You have, I think, more charitability is could be extended to you reasonably as opposed to someone like BX Bullet. And maybe you expect that, but to me, it's not. I'm more dispassionate about it. It's like I would go just as hard against them as I would against you, and yeah, I think that there's like it's only because it's you in this case.
I think the problem is CounterPoints. I think has got a fairly deserved reputation as like the reasonable kind of righty guy, right? Like Rob Noor is like consistently argued and made a fool of himself and stuff like that. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe Rob Noor needs to be treated better. Sure, maybe that's the case. I don't know.
That's no. It's that like everybody could be treated equally as bad. Like to me, it's like I'll hold anyone's feet to the fire. And if anything, like what Connor's saying is a point in my favor because it's like, yeah, Connor, I know you as the more reasonable conservative centrist type, so I actually expect more from you. So when you bring arguments or like narratives like this to the table, I'm like, nah, like he's better than this. So like he can take it, he can dish it. Like I think you can. I think
Well,
it's fine.
Well, then that's why I appreciate you not complaining. Was the fountain a part of that? All right, awesome. So that's where. Hold on, I'm almost done. So actually, I'm just going to mute myself for a second. I'll hold my thought.
Okay.
I do want to point out that for CounterPoints arguments, though, it did feel like you had to be bought into at least part of the conspiracy for everything else to fall in place. I'm not surprised if people were frustrated with that.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it's based off of conjecture. And honestly, I think the conversation could be a lot more productive, or like I wouldn't take as much umbrage with it if Connor had framed it like, hey, to be clear, what I'm advancing here is a narrative. It's a story. It's like logical leaps and inferences that I'm making using inductive logic, not deductive logic. I'm not stating this as fact. This is just something that I believe is likely that I don't think people are considering. But instead, Connor was trying to make empirical claims and assertions and saying that the way that he was explaining the Twitter files was like exactly how it started or like exactly how it happened, and that people who disagreed with him were being unreasonable or they had their head in the sand and just like couldn't see the truth or something like that. But I just felt like he was making the claims that he was trying to make. He just didn't have enough evidence to back any of them up.
Well, and that I'm outside now, so it should be a little bit better. If that's like I'll admit to that failure in rhetoric immediately. Because basically, like, I don't expect if I'm speculating on people's motivations based off of available based off of available evidence, but I don't actually have any evidence to speak to other people's motivations. I think motivations are probably like the hardest fucking thing in the world to articulate. I think we all understand that in that space or in this space is like you can see somebody's arguments, but to infer motivation from it is like 10 times more difficult. So that's where like even forwarding like part 2A of my argumentation and then being called a fucking liar. Like obviously I'm on the fucking back foot. And then at that point, because actually that I'm not gonna lie, being called a liar and being said that fucking Trump's dick was in my ear and also fucking being called a hall monitor, all three of those triggered the absolute fuck out of me. Like absolutely based off of like quote unquote my reputation in the space. So I
Yeah,
felt like
Right.
I've extended a lot of charity, real quick. I've extended a lot of charity and deference to Destiny in the past. I've extended a lot of charity and deference in my limited interactions with Supreme. I like Supreme a lot. So for people to kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, this is a dog pile. On top of that, I'm not going to try to steel man him. And on top of that, I'm going to act like he's fucking retarded. And on top of that, I'm going to restate his arguments in the most retarded way possible. That was, like, to put it lightly, frustrating. And I did take it personally.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I will say it was a good thing that Destiny kind of tone checked the hall monitor comments because otherwise, like that could have gotten a lot uglier.
It was tongue in
Well,
cheek. I know that you used to be a
that's about
police
it.
officer, Connor, but I guess and again these are like just I'm just gonna find another hair to split, okay? But when you say like a 4-year career, people are dogging on you about that because I think the implication with the word career is typically experience in a field that it's in excess of like 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So to say like a 4-year career, I think to most people comes off almost like an oxymoron because that's just like limited experience in a particular field. I know that you've said that you were in the Marines, right?
Yes. So
So
it's like
if
8
in your
years
mind, I'm
in
sure that
security
you're
service.
right. I was about to say you're including all of those things
Mhm.
holistically as like this spans my career. But I think to anybody who doesn't know your lore, when you say like my 4-year career starts and ends with 3 years of patrol and policing plus like
Mhm.
1 year security or whatever, it sounds like I didn't think you were lying about your credentials, but you were overstating them, and
Mhm.
then especially they weren't as relevant as you believed, um, given the assertions that you were making.
Right, sure. And that this is all fine.
Mhm.
The and by the way, like this is the other thing too that I think I articulated probably at like the 60 or 70% mark, where I was like, hey, this is my opinion. If you don't agree with my speculation or conjecture based off of my like lived experience and the evidence that I'm looking at, that's fine. Just don't treat me like I'm fucking retarded for making this, making these claims. Which, it was probably too late if I had led with that. Maybe like maybe if testing was like, hey, you're a liar. If I had paused the conversation, I'd been like, hey, listen, I have 4 years in the Marine Corps. I have 4 years in law enforcement. I'm known as a charitable person. I always try to tell the truth when I'm having conversations. I would appreciate it if you didn't assign a shitload of malice to me right out the gate. If you're willing to hear me out, I would love to hear how I'm wrong. That
Yeah.
sentence would have been infinitely more powerful in setting the tone for the conversation, but it was such a fucking slap in the face that it was, kind of like I just got triggered instantly. And not just that, but just like those little quips, those little like nips on the side and shit, like the hall monitor shit, fucking Cherry saying that like me and my editor didn't agree, so I needed to leave the stream in order to go research shit. It all felt like very condescending, very dismissive, treating me like a fucking retard. And if you do know my lore, which half of these people do, it felt like, oh, I thought I earned some respect in this space that clearly I didn't. My relationships with these people are not what I thought they were. As a result, I actually am insulted and I am angry. So,
Yeah,
that's not a
fair enough. Like
conscious thought. That was
I
all
see your perspective.
subconscious.
I mean, I see your perspective because like from each individual person who's like part of the dog pile, it's like there's a saying that's like no snowflake feels like they're part of the avalanche. But when you're on the
Right.
receiving end of it, like you're saying, it kind of builds and builds and builds and builds, and then you snap. And even if you snap at one person's going to take the brunt of like when you snap. So in this case, it was Cherry, and then from there you took
Yeah.
more shots at Steven and everybody else on the call for being overly dismissive. Um, but
Yeah.
from my perspective, and like I completely understand that. Again, like it's gonna be lost on you or whatever, because it's just from my POV. It's like I barely spoke in that conversation, but people were saying that Cherry and Cherry, I felt like Cherry also barely spoke, that we were the most toxic or whatever. But from your perspective, I can understand that, how it feels uncalled for.
OMG. Elon Musk is
Well,
But
not
the
and
the
some
night
I'm
before,
altruistic,
mhm.
freedom
the
fighting
night
Sorry, go ahead.
before,
do-gooder
how long
who
did
bought Twitter to
you
save the
and Steven and
marketplace of
maybe like one of
ideas.
it was Cherry
He's
and
just
Wicked
a
the night
rich
before
dude who
too,
got
right?
bored and wanted to fuck
Yeah,
with
and we talked for
people.
like
About
an
the
hour.
algorithm. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the conversation had already happened, and then you came into Wish him happy birthday, and he made like the side remark about like, you bring any evidence for your claims this time, buddy? And from
Yeah.
there you actually engaged seriously. So from my perspective, I was like, oh man, are we really gonna loop on this? And I just didn't expect that we were going to loop on it for as long as we did. So to me, I was like, at that point, I'm like in meme mode. I'm
Yeah.
not taking it as seriously, but you actually were taking it seriously. So like, as a step back, I can see how to a viewer it comes off as like being particularly like cruel or dismissive. But I felt like the conversation was just looping at this point, because I didn't
Well,
think that Steve was
and
going
I'll
to agree.
sure. And then I'm getting home, so I'll actually probably have a better connection in a second. So I'll tell you why. So the line, Trump's dick in your ear, you should go back to your editor and research this before you come back. All of that kind of set the tone for me. And I'm not the kind of person to back off. If you're like, hey bro, you're kind of dumb. You need to come back to this once you've researched it more. We're gonna have fucking words, right?
Mm.
So that, if anybody's ever trying to have a conversation with me and they're like, hey bro, like if they try to little bro me, we're gonna fucking fight. It doesn't matter if I win. It doesn't matter if I lose. We're gonna fucking fight. So
Did she call you
the
stupid or dumb?
well, I'm pretty
Or
sure saying like, hey, you need to leave this call in order to go confer with your editor more because you're too stupid to fucking understand what he's saying. When Sherry didn't even understand what he was saying, that was that felt pretty fucking dismissive. I'll
Well,
admit.
because she couldn't re-summarize the exact disagreement that he had with you once you dragged him into the stream. But I think the general point that she was trying to make is that regardless of what was said, it's very clear that he disagreed with your own characterization of his arguments that you'd had prior. So you didn't actually have additional information or evidence to bring to the conversation, given the claims that you were saying, because the person, like the alibi that you brought on, immediately was like, to be clear, I disagree with Connor. And she was just saying like, look, you're trying to loop on this conversation. It seems like you're out of your depth. Why don't you just like tap out? Which again, you could believe is like condescending or whatever. But I think there's a level of malice here that's being assigned to like Cherry's motivations as to like why she made the comments. That maybe it's just a matter of like rhetoric and like tone policing. Like, oh, she could have said that to you nicer in a way that's less condescending. But I think she was just saying like prepare more, basically.
Well, he's also making appeals to authority throughout the conversation, like 40 people on a job, and he knows 6 of them, and referring to his past. Like, you say that you're speaking from a place of opinion, but when you're making your arguments, it actually sounds like we should just appeal to your authority of your past, and that you're kind of speaking from a position of it being facts, what you're saying. If that makes sense.
I agree. I mean, why also the credentials be invoked if not to give yourself more legitimacy or say that you have a more relevant voice to add to the conversation than most other people? And Connor left. But
I'm sure he's
mentioned this.
probably just switching.
Wait, I
his
think he's
setup.
just disconnected. Okay, listen. He's coming back. Don't worry.
Okay,
Yeah.
there he is. And Ruminate's
Oh, ready
here.
for the dunk. Straight raid. Bad faith. Ready for the dunk already. Oh my goodness.
I've been ready.
Uh-oh. Did the temperature change while I was gone?
Yeah, you should have heard what she was saying about. No, I'm just kidding.
Shut up.
Absolutely Arctic.
All right, hold on. I'm joining in on my desktop, so my quality should get a lot better.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, listen, we've heard enough from, the fairer sex, let's be honest. I want to hear from Ruminate, because Ruminate,
I
you were
agree.
there. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Now, Ruminate, you were there, and I feel like you were putting a lot of effort in to bring the temperature down, and I think you could kind of see that shit was going a bit west when you were in the call, if that's a term. What do you think about what happened? What was your take?
Boo, fuck you, Ruminate, trying to be good faith.
Oh
in
my
a
god, I
convo
just
like
said about that. You got to speak up again.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Number one, I think we can all agree that Aaron is extremely toxic and vitriolic. No, I'm just kidding.
I agree with that.
The temperature was absolutely rising, and I as a relatively new Destiny orbiter, I try to stay out of like the drama stuff. So between that and recovering from the flu at the same time that we got from Destiny's canvassing event, it was all just like extremely intense. What was funny was I thought we were on the cusp of some sort of consensus right before Cherry spoke up, and then it kind of devolved into a back and forth between her and Connor. So I felt kind of robbed of that. I was like, damn it, we were so close to, I think, moving Connor a bit. And then of course at the end I asked him, hey, going back to it, it looked like we were on the verge of a consensus. Are we there? And he said no. And that's actually one of the reasons why I jumped into this call, because we have a couple of days separating now from the actual drama, and I wonder if he's revisited his views. So I do have a couple of questions for him as soon as he comes back. But yeah, unfortunately, I just don't contribute much to drama, so I just kind of mute my mic and wait for my opportunity.
There we go.
Fuck you, Ruinate.
Right.
This
Sorry
is
about
the
that.
intellectual mud pit.
Listen,
okay?
straight
You're
away.
getting in the
Listen,
way.
I've never let a woman speak this much before in my life. This is unheard of. Okay, what the fuck? Okay,
Can I
counterpoints,
say I was actually gonna say I was really thankful when I saw Chud fucking watching it, because I was like, oh man, he's sexist too. This will be good.
oh my god.
I'll get some
Oh,
some fucking sympathy for me fucking yelling the C word at women.
Hey, Connor, I do want to speak up here for just a minute now that you're back in the call.
Sure.
Let's ruminate.
Yeah,
A couple of
buddy?
things. Number one, you've said this on Twitter, and you said this in some of the post-discussion, post-mortems. I just want to say, I do think that you have a pretty well-earned reputation as a reasonable conservative. I agree with you. That's not something that you've just invented yourself. I know you don't feel that was validated in the conversation, but genuinely, I feel that way. You and Taj and Eucharist are three of my favorite conservative streamers, even though I'm a staunch Democrat and I hate the Republican Party and all these things. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't, contribute at all to the shit slinging or anything like that, because I think you've earned your reputation. And that was also one of the reasons why I stayed in the conversation as long as I did, because it went on for like 6 hours, it felt like, because I really felt that we could have come to like a good faith consensus, or at least consensus adjacent position. So the other thing is, though, the fact that you're a reasonable conservative, it just kind of perplexes me that you're as sympathetic to this narrative as you are about the Twitter files. And so, we've had a couple of days. So here's my question. When I asked you that night, like, hey, have we moved you at all? Are you open to the possibility that the interpretation that Destiny and Wicked Supreme and Aaron and Cherry and I were kind of proffering, that was more probable than the one you were proffering? You said no. And I'm just curious, in the past few days, have you moved at all on that?
Yeah. So basically, what I would say is if there was like the known knowns and the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns and like all that kind of stuff, right? If the argument is like on the known knowns, like the things that we know and we know them right in front of us, our argumentation, like Destiny shares everybody else's perspective, is what we're going off of, and based on the argumentation that you presented, we believe our perspective is probable. I'm perfectly willing to accept that. So because it's like
the roboting's back. I'm sorry
Yeah,
to interrupt you. It's just getting progressively worse.
Yeah,
I'm on the hard line. What the fuck? I'm on the hard
you
line.
sounded good there. I think it's when you went too long without saying fuck, and I think you started roboting.
True.
More misogyny.
I loaded in video game as well. That could have been part of the problem.
Okay.
So yeah. So basically, like, if it's like, hey, we have an alternative perspective that we believe is more likely based off of this, and that. Like as a matter of fact, the conversation we could have had, but obviously this isn't good content, is, hey guys, I'm a right-wing sympathetic person. I think these are all the things that I could, extrapolate based off of my worldview, blah, blah, blah. Here's my theory on what happened. And they're like, okay, we'll hear you out. And then they're like, okay, at the end of that, they're like, that's dumb. I think that this perspective makes more sense based off of our perspective. As a result, do you think that, you could see a difference, or how our scenario is more likely? And in that kind of conversation, I could be like, yeah, I would want to see, even before, I assert that I believe that my worldview is still possible, or plausible, I understand that you're acting based off of your evidence. I'm acting based off of my evidence. Your evidence is stronger. My evidence is weaker. That way, until we find out ABC, XYZ details, we're just not going to know. I will put it in the back of my head that your shit is more probable than my shit, and we'll move on because we respect each other as adults with like professional and personal experiences and insights into different subjects and all that kind of shit. But that's not good content. What is good content is, hey, Connor, you're a fucking retard conspiracy theorist wearing a fucking tinfoil hat. You got Trump's dick in your ear and you're fucking retarded. Your professional experience is the equivalent of that of a hall monitor, and you're kind of a piece of shit for bringing up somebody getting murdered as a part of your defense for your professional experience. Eat a dick, you stupid piece of shit. And by the way, if we were to boil down like the past, or the 3 hours of content, I'm not saying that's what people intended to tell me. That's absolutely like the emotional reaction that I had. That is the vibe that I was receiving. Is you're retarded, your shit is unsound, your professional experience doesn't matter. Go fuck yourself.
Right.
So sad.
Well, no, man. I appreciate that. At least we get closer to some sort of consensus, and I'll leave like all the Trump stick in your ear and you're a piece of shit. That's all Erin's bag, man. I mean, she's got
True.
But okay, but Aaron,
Let me hold
see,
it.
but now we're having this conversation where like, okay, have you guys ever seen the movie MacGruber?
I've seen
Yeah.
parts. Yeah. Why?
Okay, so there's a scene where like MacGruber is like this like hero. He's based off of the character MacGyver. Like he's not supposed to use guns, and he like creates inventions in order to beat people. And it's like it's a comedy. I think it's not Will Arnett. It's somebody. But basically there's a scene where you think MacGruber is gonna throw like his body in front of his friend as like bad guys come to like machine gun them. And so what I'm probably gonna do for my manifesto is I'm gonna like splice Aaron's fucking Straight Raid's voice on like you're a fucking hall monitor, and then I'm just gonna have like the clip of like Sherry getting machine gunned to death, because
Nice.
that's what it feels like fucking happened was, Straight Raid threw the fucking grenade, and then Sherry caught the fucking wrath. That's what happened.
Okay, there's
True.
a
That's
criticism
Aaron's
I've heard
MO.
repeated that I just want to hear your response to. So the criticism is, and I think Mindwaves was sort of saying this as well, that you came in too hot from the start and you were very aggressive throughout the conversation, and therefore somewhat deserved some of the backlash you were getting.
It's fine. I can agree that I deserve the fucking backlash. I can also agree that when people that I thought respected me, whom I respect, treat me like a fucking retard, I'm gonna take that personal.
Well,
So-
look, Connor.
Also a bit
You're talking about. Well, go for it. Who's talking?
I was just gonna say it wasn't really proportionate, though, was it?
What, me calling Sherry a cunt?
No. Well, okay, maybe that lashing out probably was uncalled for, but I mean the response to your aggressiveness and approaching that conversation.
Well, I think we're also coming into a prior conversation where this is something that I do have to speak on this. So basically, this is context that y'all may not be aware of. It'll be in the manifesto. Check it out. But basically, the conversation wasn't, hey, like he DMs me, right? Says, hey, Connor, you want to come on and talk about Elon and Twitter? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I got interesting perspectives, whatever. We don't talk about our prior positions. We don't talk about my tweets. We don't talk about shit. And then basically he comes like, so basically like I'm assuming that he's going off of my tweets, right? That's the only thing interesting that I've had in reference to the Twitter files. And instead what happens is I show up and I'm immediately assigned, you think that conservatives are being banned for the sole responsibility or the sole variable of being conservative? And it's like, nowhere in my content are you going to find that. Nowhere in my tweets are you going to find that. So I was immediately like assigned a position I didn't want to defend. It was
Okay,
repeatedly-
the Robocop
Hold
still
on.
has. Sorry to interrupt again. The Robocop. I'm getting complaints from chat. They're calling you Robocop. Okay, I just want to let you know.
All right, let me exit. Okay, we can't have fun and talk at the same time, I guess.
Okay.
Aaron,
I guess
quit
I just
fucking
see-
up Connor's connection. I don't know what it
Shut
is
up.
you're doing, but
Okay,
There
hold
are
on.
better
So,
ways to fuck with Connor than just messing with his mic. Apparently, all I have to do is drop the
Okay.
words hall monitor and he ults.
please. So hold on.
so-
I exited 2 programs, and so now it should be better.
You're put clear.
Okay, and then hold on. Before anybody interjects, I would like to finish this point. He said if you want to have an in general discussion, he assigns me a position as soon as I walk through the door. I'm pretty sure there's and then he shoehorns the conversation into what about the Twitter files is new and historic, which are like two variables that I've never forwarded as an argumentation. And so, and then also when I try to make a positive argument, he says, "Oh, I already know what you're going to say." And by the way, like that's like the most done that to me before. That's the most condescending piece of shit fucking thing that you can say when you're inviting somebody on for a conversation is I already know what you're going to say. Because what you're saying by saying that you already know what I'm going to say is one, you're fucking psychic. You know all my argumentation. And two, you're fucking bored by it. So if I continue to try to forward my positive position, I'm actually being an asshole by forcing you to listen to my perspective that you already understand. So when that's the framing of the conversation and I'm already fighting on the back foot, that first conversation I could have chalked up to he dyed his hair blue, it's seeping into his brain, he's got the flu, there might be some drama on the home front, he's having a bad night. Okay, that can be the first conversation. I can walk away from that, not that be that ass mad. But when I come back and it's the same fucking attitude, yeah, I'm gonna take that shit personal.
Connor, I don't think that's fair because Destiny steelman both his own argument and your own argument on that notepad that he wrote out.
What point in the conversation?
I can't remember, not too far into it. In the second conversation that I was in, he was like, okay, I'm going to write out your position and I'm going to write out my own. Okay. And we can compare them and we can see whose claims have more evidence to support them. And all of his claims had evidence and all of yours were kind of a just those stories.
That
so
did
I feel
happen,
like you're saying
but don't you feel at other
right?
times that Destiny was attributing the most insane, retarded, conservative position to CounterPoints, even though he wasn't necessarily making that argument at times in the conversation?
Well, I want to ask about that because if I remember correctly, wasn't it tweets, Connor, that like precipitated this entire thing? Wasn't it
allegedly?
Okay. So here's my question because I didn't follow it that closely until you were in the voice chat with Destiny and the two conversations. Do you feel, set your reputation aside, do you feel that with respect to your commentary on Twitter or on stream, with regards to the Twitter files, that you meaningfully distinguished yourself initially from the overwhelming right-wing talking point? Like,
no.
if it was the tweets that triggered this, do you think you made it clear in your tweets, hey, I think there's something to the Twitter files. That said, every right-winger who's blowing it out of proportion, they're idiots and they're wrong. Like, I do
have one tweet. Yeah, I do have one tweet like that, but basically I had like 3 or 4 tweets, right? And the one where I was like, conservatives who think that Twitter executives are going to jail are fucking delusional. Like that was one of the different takes, because right now, like the conservative narrative, and this is something that, like, when I said that I had an infinitely more charitable and explainable perspective on this shit than all of the other right wingers, and they were like, well, it's still retarded. I was like, okay, fuck you. Because basically the right wing narrative is that the Twitter files absolutely prove collusion between the 3-letter agencies and social media to ban conservatives specifically in order to help Biden take the presidency. That's the argumentation on Twitter. That's not my fucking argument.
I know that's not your argument. Yeah. I think you made that relatively clear at various points during the conversation. Feel like well, it did to me, and that's why I treated you as charitably as I did. But if the thing that precipitated this were your tweets, and the only meaningful distinction that you made between yourself and right wingers is just that you didn't think that Twitter executives were going to go to jail. Yeah. Do you think you could have been clearer in your initial commentary? Because again, that was the catalyst for all of it, for every interaction since then.
In this entire 4 hours, like if you take the first hour and then you take the 3 hours afterwards, on the first conversation, I should have said, stop. I'm not talking until I pull up my tweets. Here are my 4 tweets. What do you take issue with within these tweets, and allow me to explain them? That's what I should have done for the first conversation.
Fair.
For the second conversation, I should have stopped, I think, when we first started getting heated, where Sherry was like, well, I think you need to go confer with your editor. I obviously took that personal. And then I think when Destiny called me a liar, like, if I was forwarding my position shittily up until that point, like, that's fine. Yeah. But I should have paused there and been like, hey, you're attacking me based off of my perspective that I don't think you even fully understand. If you want to have this conversation, you have to let me get out my argument first, and I'm going to need some time because I don't just feel like this is based off of one point. I feel like I could have had a rhetorical responsibility that would have put me in an infinitely better position, but I also feel like I'm saying that I could have done better in this conversation. I also think that 5 people fucking come after me for every fucking sub point of my broader points and not allowing me to get shit out and calling me a retard the entire time. I do think they have a little bit of responsibility too.
I'm not one of the 5, right?
No. Ruminate. No, you've been very helpful.
Yeah, and I
Stardust,
agree with
go on.
CounterPoints. Yeah, I agree with Connor. And I do think Ruminate was one of the better faith people in the conversation. But what I've noticed, at least in this conversation, let me just preface this with saying I don't personally agree with what Connor was arguing, but I do think that all of the jabs being made at him from the get-go were not very helpful in the conversation. And what I've noticed about this conversation in particular is that I've noticed Connor conceding on many, many points. I don't see other parties who were involved in that previous conversation conceding on anything.
Well, I think
No, but I wasn't
think
making
Straight Rate has
baseless
said
claims.
like I made a shit. Well, hold on, we need to get into that. Okay, we
Well,
actually
it's
you
not
said
about
this
the
shit
baseless
earlier.
claims, though, right? Like it's about.
It is.
It
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 is.
is if you're
So-
saying that there's something for me to concede, but I never advanced an argument. I was just just employing.
You were just
polemics
shit
around
posting.
him.
You were just shit posting,
Yeah.
weren't you?
Yeah,
I was shit posting.
I think the shit posting, I don't
I
know
mean,
the full.
it's me, and I would agree, sure.
But that's
Yeah,
content.
I mean, I'm not saying
That's
mean. I'm
content,
just
baby.
saying it was. I was just saying that. Look, I don't think it was at a certain point. I get it's funny, but at another point, it's not really helping the conversation when there are people genuinely trying to advance the conversation.
I don't know that anyone was there trying to genuinely advance the conversation. I never
I
claimed
think
to be
Ruminate
doing
was.
that. Maybe Ruminate was.
I think
only
Ruminate
after...
was. I think Connor was. I think Wicked Supreme was for a good portion.
But then he
And I'm just
got the
gonna say,
booting as well. What was that about? Supreme started glaring into you too. I was like, Jesus, what the fuck?
Well, because Wicked Supreme has a lot of
He probably saw me
experience
going after Sherry.
in tangential in a tangential field, and he's reached a different conclusion than you.
Sure,
So
and I
he was
agree
just
with
criticizing Connor for saying that, like, okay, if I'm talking to you kind of like as a I don't know, fellow employee with
Here.
relevant experience or whatever, he's like, come on, dude, you know that this would never pass the sniff test if you tried to advance this in like a
I don't
professional
have any
setting.
problem with what Wicked Supreme said.
Well,
I don't have any
Paul,
problem with
you-
what he said.
But what
I thought you
what
did.
Straight Rate has said like 2 things that I have to take issue with, okay? I feel like because I invoked my professional credentials, people are like, well, you're invoking your professional credentials to say that if you were like criminally investigating this situation, you would have something substantive to forward. It's not what I'm fucking saying at all. Like all I was saying was that I have relevant personal and professional experience that is leading me to my conclusions, and I would like it if you basically like gave me some charitability or deference in reference to, my accolades, right? That way you can like take my arguments seriously because I'm not an unserious or stupid person, which everybody
And I
in this
think
not this conversation, but the previous conversation was treating me like I was a stupid and unserious person.
Right, but I think that the way to alleviate that wouldn't be to boast credentials. It would have just been to bring more evidence with your claims, and that literally would have
Okay,
been the thing that remedied all of that.
This is the crux of this argument, though. So what's going on is, and Destiny pissed me off with this shit too. There's probably like 75%, 85% like descriptive agreement. So if you're like, the Hunter Biden laptop was turned in February of Ruminate can remind me, like either like 2019 or 2020, I forget.
It was December 2019.
Okay, December 2019, and then the Twitter files or not the Twitter files. The Hunter Biden laptop story was released in October by the Trump campaign, right? Like we can agree on those facts, right? And then from those facts, we're making different inferences. And so what everybody else has said is I'm only looking at the available evidence. I'm going based off of the available evidence. And as a result, I believe that this narrative is most likely. What I'm saying is, based off of the available evidence and having worked in institutions that I believe are not the same, but are parallel, I think that there's a convergence of perverse interest in here. And I would like to basically say that I think that this is possible. And at some points, I would say even plausible. Now, when you start treating me like a retard and you're like, hey, you don't have any evidence, in order to forward the perspective that I had, I would need more information that I don't have access to. I would need subpoenas for cell phones. I would need subpoenas for laptops. I would need subpoenas for computers. I would need access to the Hunter Biden laptop itself. I would need the digital forensics history. And this is all information that you could research based off of a hypothesis. But because people are saying like, well, you can't present to me the Hunter Biden laptop, the digital forensics report, the cell phone records from the FBI agents who were working with social media companies, their private fucking data and all that kind of stuff. Because you can't give me that information, like you're fucking retarded and you don't know how to conduct an investigation. Not only that are you retarded, but you're exaggerating your experience to the point that you're basically the equivalent of a hall monitor. And on top of that, I bet that you arrested the wrong people conducting your previous investigations. Both of those things were said in that conversation. So
Well,
if I get fucking ass
I
mad and start calling people cunts because I'm not a public servant anymore, and when somebody's a cunt to me, I can call them a cunt. You can, that it is what it is.
I think Cherry, when she made that comment, it was a spicy joke and tongue in cheek. I don't think she was actually accusing you of having like jailed an innocent man. One and two, you're saying that like you're like how can you guys expect me to like bring evidence to my claims when I don't have access to that information? It's like, but that's Steven's point. That's my point. That's maybe even Ruminate's point. Like exactly, if you don't have the evidence for your claims, then you shouldn't be making your evidence, or you shouldn't be making those claims in the first place. That was the only thing that people took contention with.
That's not how truth, opinion, or the Twitch politics space works. Like truth is not reliant on whether or not you know evidence. It's whether or not evidence exists. So if you don't have access to that evidence, you can't understand it. So truth, like, throw that out the fucking window. Then when it comes to opinion, I'm a fucking American. I'm on a goddamn social media platform. And on top of that, I'm a content creator. I'm allowed to say whatever the fuck I want. If I want to say that fucking, Avatar, the fact that the Marines didn't fucking curb stomp the goddamn Na'vi is a major plot point, and the fucking Native American allegories can suck a fucking dick. That's my opinion, and I can say whatever the fuck I want to it, regardless of whether or not I have any evidence for it at all. And then also on top of that, this was part of my point in the conversation. This is the Twitch politics space. So basically, this is filled with internet schizoids and fucking randos and so many people postulating out of their fucking ass all of the goddamn time that the fact that I feel like over the past couple of years, I have a body of work that shows that when I form an opinion, I don't base it off of nothing. When people that I respect their rhetoric and I respect their intelligence. And then they tell me to my face that they don't respect my rhetoric or my intelligence, you better believe I'm gonna take it fucking personal. Is it right for me to take it personal? I have no fucking idea. But at the same time, yeah, I'm gonna be fucking offended.
But then everybody else could make the same claim that everybody else isn't like. If you're entitled to make claims without evidence,
do you dogpile?
everybody.
Hold on, straight away. Does everybody get dogpiled for every opinion that they have that they don't have evidence for in this space?
I'm guessing you're gonna say no, and no, probably not. I guess, or maybe, but maybe they should. Maybe that's what I would say to that is like, if people are making claims without evidence and nobody is calling them out for it, then I think that's bullshit. And I think that you should be called out and they should be called out, and then we'll all live happily ever after, and it's a better space for it if people are actually being held accountable for the things that they say.
Well, I mean,
I don't think it's impossible to ask people for evidence for the claims that they make.
If every single person were calling out every opinion that didn't have facts to back it up, I think it would be impossible to have conversations. I'm not saying that calling out Connor for his inability to back up things is wrong, right? However, I do think that there was a level of antagonism coming from certain members in that conversation. And I think Connor is the only one who has conceded on his shortcomings in that conversation, and nobody else has.
These were not just opinions, though. These were claims. And those are two different things.
He specifically said it was an opinion.
I want to ask you a question. Straight away, do you know what's allegedly on the Hunter Biden laptop?
On the Hunter Biden laptop? No.
Okay.
I think people said that it was like they thought that Hunter Biden had more malicious ties to Ukraine or something like that, and then the nudes, of course.
China, yeah.
Okay, you have already forwarded a better steelman of why people are interested in the Hunter Biden story than 95% of the people participating in the conversation. 95% of the people who are participating in the conversation are saying that the laptop is exclusively revenge porn in order to damage the reputation of the Biden family. They never talk about the fact that it's been basically proven that Hunter Biden and his firm took $11 million from Burisma for the past fucking 10 years, that he did not disclose $400,000 in a certain year point in order for Burisma, and that there's emails, allegedly authentic emails, where he is soliciting bribes from other people in order to do introductions for his fucking dad. Okay, the entire story gets dismissed as a basically like a wild conspiracy theory where conservatives just want to see Hunter Biden's dick. That's how it's talked about in this space. So if I know that, and I know that people are being opinionated fucking jackasses based off of information that they don't fucking know, I also reserve the right to do the same in a different direction.
So
Well,
Connor, here's my question.
that's
but
what
hang on.
Destiny did then. We'll
Hang
go
on,
for it,
my
Renee.
question
Did
is
what?
this. Yeah, so Connor, are you open to the possibility that your reputation is kind of a two-edged sword in the sense that,
Of
like,
course.
I understand where you're coming from, which is, look, I have demonstrated consistently that I'm not a cookie-cutter conservative or Republican. I'm not of the MAGA strain. I constantly criticize the right. But your interpretation is, okay, so that reputation should afford me a greater degree of charity. But also, it also burdens you with a greater sense of like expectation. Like people expect more out of you than somebody like Lecture Fan or Rob Noor or somebody like that. So when
But are they
well,
expecting something? Sorry, go ahead.
well, no. So what I was going to say is, or I think what Straighter Aid mentioned earlier, and I think it might have been before you jumped in the call, is she was kind of that mindset, and I think I was too to some extent, which is I was kind of perplexed by your sympathy to what I believe is a conspiracy theory because you seemed less likely than anybody to, to be sympathetic to something like that. So I guess my question is, do you see it the other way? Like, do you see where it's like,
yeah. Yeah, so if I'm afforded that level of charitability where you're like, this is normally a smart guy and he's got a dog shit take on this, I would like to walk you through my dog shit take first, and then you can make a decision about whether or not it's actually dog shit. And I don't feel like I was afforded the opportunity to do that in either one of the conversations. And this is the thing too. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
When this is part of the condescension when it comes to like libertarians and conservatives and fucking right-leaning people and Christians and all that kind of stuff. When they come into a left-wing space, if they don't agree based off of a certain amount of perspectives, it's not because they actually have like a deeply rooted philosophy and historical understanding of the situation. It's because they're either like stupid, malicious, conspiratorial, or they're wrong, and we expect, like, even the good ones, like, when you understand that when you say, I expected more from you, that feels like a big fucking, like, not you specifically, I'm just saying when progressives and liberals say that, it's like a big fucking pat on the head where it's like, he's one of the good ones. When the Civil War comes, we're not going to kill him. He's a nice one. Like, it feels like a fucking dog pat on the head instead of me being a human being with opinions you respect.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I feel like
I certainly
that's-
understand where you're coming from. I just think that your reputation is unfortunately something that cuts both ways. There's going to be a higher
It does,
level of
because I
expectation.
shouldn't. This is actually something that my editor fucking dogged me on when we went back after both conversations. He's like, you're expecting charitability. You have to be ready for a charitable conversation, and you have to be ready for an uncharitable conversation. And walking in flat-footed is just not going to be a tactical option anymore. So,
Gotcha.
okay, so I guess I literally, every time I have an opinion on the internet, I have to have my genuine opinion that I hold based off of my personal and professional experiences, and then I have to ask myself before I walk into a conversation with my peers, what if my peers treat me like a fucking baboon for the next 3 hours? What will be my logical backup plan in order to forward my argumentation against people who think I'm fucking retarded? And then that's what I'm going to have to ask myself every single time I want to go on stream with somebody who's left a fucking Joe Biden himself.
Wait, sorry,
I don't
I
know,
want
I
to bring
feel
some
like
evidence
you've
into the... Listen, we need to bring some evidence into the equation here, because I've got a tweet from yourself here, CounterPoints, that reads as follows. Progressives acting like this is a nothing burger are delusional. Conservatives were making legal speech and were told for years they weren't being shadow banned, they were just unpopular. This is now a provable lie, and the shoe is on the other foot. Good luck.
Yep.
See, like, I don't get that, Connor. How can you be complaining that people are treating, like, Steven and other people in the call were treating you as a proxy for the right when this tweet demonstrates that you were kind of treating all of us already like proxies for the left? I feel like that's just both sides are doing that. If you disagree with that, then I don't know what to say. I feel like you did the same thing.
Well,
I
I
mean,
normally walk in.
progressive speaks to
Sorry, go ahead.
millions of people, right?
Who?
I said progressive speaks to millions of people, right? Not just this specific group.
Sure.
Maybe, but in the context of like a Discord call or whatever, I don't think anybody's going to make the assumption that, oh, when he says progressives, he's definitely not referring to the very people in this call right now. He's talking about like the broader American left or progressive movement or something like that. People are just going to assume that when he says that, he's talking to everybody else in the call.
This was before the call. This was fucking. This was the tweet that preceded all of the conversation.
But I guess the issue is if you're framing it as your opinion, this is stating that something is like a provable lie, and that says more. Right?
Okay, so let's walk through that. So basically, I understand that shadow banning. There was a Mott and Bailey there where people basically said shadow banning is exclusively based off of Twitter TOS. It's only when you make a tweet or a post and you're the only person who can see it because the social media platform against your will and without notification made you invisible to all of your followers. That's what Twitter has defined shadow ban as. But let's do a charity test here. Do you think that for the past half decade, when libs of TikTok, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, all of the big conservative figures, when they were complaining about being shadow banned or algorithmically suppressed, do you think that they meant that literally when they make a post, their post is utterly invisible to everybody except for them?
No, I don't think so. I doubt it. They would probably.
Yeah,
have
no, I
evidence
don't think
that
so either.
They would have no engagement whatsoever.
Okay, so clearly when we're talking about shadow ban, we're actually talking about what happened in the Twitter files, where they did black search lists. They did do not amplify, which is Twitter's monetization program. They did what was the other one? Do not amplify, search blacklist. Do not trend. That was another one. So there was 3 of those. So that was happening. Now you can say like liberals and progressives have justification because these people are spreading COVID misinformation or blah, blah, blah. But what I would say is the problem, the reason why this isn't a nothing burger, you could say that the Twitter files themselves were a nothing burger because they described a reality that we already understood. But what I would say the broader discourse is that we are allowing the Overton window, which I know everybody cringes when I say that, we are allowing the Overton window to be decided arbitrarily by a techno oligopoly who have all decided that the same rules fit cross-platform. Like for like the top 5 most popular media companies. And the shoe is on the other foot. I will die on this fucking hill. Like y'all could say like, Connor, you got to change your opinion or I'm going to show up to your house and I'm going to fucking stab you. Like, I would not change my opinion on this. The shoe is on the other foot. Good luck. What I mean by that is Elon Musk, because we've allowed social media techno oligopolies to control national discourse, the richest man on the planet has bought one of the major social media programs.
But the thing is, you're fucking rattling off into, and you're making lots of conjecture and all this stuff. You're not basing it on the evidence. And this is the whole fucking problem, isn't it? Well, the fact that so for example, in this tweet here, you're saying conservatives were making legal speech, right? There's plenty of legal speech that you can't make on Twitter that you're going to get banned for. Not necessarily that's going to come from a conservative, right?
No shit, that's the point.
But you're acting. But the thing is, when you say conservatives were making legal speech, you are leaning into the idea that people are getting banned for being conservative. Even if then later you go, well, I'm not saying it's to do with them being conservative. Why single out conservatives then?
Because there are things that conservatives want to talk about, like, COVID vaccination efficacy or the election or whatever the fuck that correlate. And this was the first conversation that correlates with being conservative, that disproportionately leads them to being whatever. Also, something that needs to be pointed out from the first conversation.
But that's a different argument. But then you're changing what the argument is.
How was a different argument? Chud, I'll fucking fist fight you, bro. What's the difference in the argument?
Because the whole point originally was you're talking about conservatives
making legally protective. Okay, conservatives are making legally protected speech. Tell me how that sentence is wrong.
Okay, but why mention conservatives at all? Why not just say people are making legal speech?
Because I'm not a lefty. I don't give a fuck about y'all. I don't give a fuck about lefties.
So then you're admitting you're being dishonest to support your narrative then, aren't you?
Dishonest?
Just like the Twitter files were. Yes, you are, because you're dishonest. No, it's dishonest because you're admitting I don't give a fuck about that side, so I'm just going to say what matters to my side.
Exactly.
No. If a bunch of fucking teenager 14-year-old anarchists are posting fucking guillotine memes on Elon Musk's fucking Twitter and they get banned, you're right. I don't give a fuck. They're not a part of my tribe.
Connor, to Chud's
So
point,
but then you're admitting that you're
biased to my tribe.
Right.
Yes, I'm biased to my tribe. You're biased to your tribe, you stupid fuck. What are you talking about?
So it's not
Okay,
principled, is all we're saying.
You're doing it because you're trying to.
Am I supposed to be like aloof from like moral intuitions and tribalism? Am I not supposed to have a fucking side that I have some technical, rhetorical, and principled allegiance to?
But then your bias is affecting your analysis. Okay,
I'm
listen.
biased?
I don't want to turn this into another dog pile. I'm going to take a step back. Right.
Okay.
Wait, Connor.
I'm sorry. I'm falling into the trap. Okay, I'm falling into the trap.
Hold on. But no, before we fucking finish
Come
this
on,
shit,
go on.
You understand that every fucking human being is biased, right?
Sure. Of course.
Okay.
Connor,
I am not above being biased. I am biased towards people. I have argumentations and principles that lean right. I argue from a right-wing perspective. I have been
And
clear
do you
about this from
agree
the
that
get-go.
bias could affect your analysis of the information and the conclusions that you come to?
Of course. I also contend that I should be able to forward my perspectives within a relatively charitable debate space, be told why I'm fucking wrong, take their arguments into consideration, and then amend my position without being called a fucking retard.
I've not called you a retard. But I
You're
might.
right.
No,
You
I'm just
have
kidding. I'm just kidding.
other people. No, that's fine. You can. I love you, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for calling.
Look,
you
the
stupid.
dishonest thing.
Connor.
Okay, maybe that was the wrong way of framing it. I'll let someone else speak in a sec. I apologize for saying dishonest. That was probably a misrepresentation of what I was truly trying to say. I don't think you're a liar. I don't think you're dishonest. Okay, let's wind it back.
I'm sorry for calling you stupid. I'm sorry.
No, listen, I'll take that.
I don't mean it.
Let's just
I don't.
move on.
And by the way, we can move on. I do want to say, Chud Logic and Irrelevant are they're my Betty Bye music. Like literally listening to schizos arguing on the fucking internet. If I'm going to sleep, it's Irrelevant or it's Chud Logic watching fucking schizos on the internet. Okay.
Connor, to Chud's point, though, I do have a question about that particular phrase where it says conservatives were making legal speech. I just have a couple of questions because now I'm kind of tripping over it. Was the contention from the left ever that Twitter's terms of service were like just encompassed everything that was legal? Like the only way you could get banned from a pre-Musk Twitter is if you said something that was illegal.
Okay. Do you want the real? You want me to be very real?
Yeah, because I'm kind of
I probably fired off this tweet while I was on the toilet taking a shit. Okay. I'm making post hoc. Yes. I'm making post hoc, deeply principled argumentation to support my previous claim that might have been unclear or imprecise or biased towards my side. So I'm trying to make a stronger argument to shore up a weaker argument that I made in the past that was limited to 250 characters on fucking Twitter.
That's fair. I just wanted to clarify because I don't think the left, I'm sure you could find cherry-picked examples, but being of the left proudly, I don't think the contention was ever that conservatives did not violate Twitter's terms of service and weren't banned or suppressed as a result. And I don't think that the left ever claimed that the Twitter's terms of service was just like it allowed everything that was legal speech. So that phrase just really tripped me up there.
Okay, so we all have autism. We're on Twitch politics, right? So what my autism is scratching at, what bugs me about the past month of political Twitter and Twitch discourse, what's bothered me for the past 5 or 10 years is conservatives and libertarians and anti-status, including trans-exclusionary radical feminists, fascists, and anarcho-capitalists, were complaining that their content and their perspectives were being shat on by the techno oligopoly, and as a result, they felt it was an unfair playing field. You can say that you can say they're stupid, you can say they're wrong, you can say their principles are dog shit, you can say all of that, but that was their complaint. I felt like there was an opportunity within the past 5 years for us to sit down and say, what is the degree of acceptable discourse? And how do we have a free society that talks about difficult subjects that kind of brings the society together? But instead, what we did is say, you're a fucking idiot, you're a retard, you don't deserve to be a part of the conversation. So as a result of calling people retarded and not deserving as being a part of the conversation, they got the world's most rich man to buy one of the most powerful social media companies, and now it's their megaphone. So
Who's they?
excuse me if I'm throwing the Jews. So excuse
Oh my
me
God.
if I'm throwing. I'm kidding. No racist. So basically, what I'm saying is this is a cultural evolution that is major, that is definitely impactful, and it's of the left's making because I'm biased to the right.
I
I don't
disagree.
see how it's
I just don't think that conservatives should be given a pass and should have like a lower standard burden of proof by virtue of the fact that they're conservatives for the arguments and evidence for the arguments that they're advancing and for the claims that they're making. And I feel like you're kind of you want it both ways, where conservatives aren't denigrated for these things, but they also are not held to the same standard as everybody else, even though they're not bringing any evidence to back up the
You can
claims that they're
denigrate
making.
them. You can
And
denigrate
that's
them.
what happened. I feel like that's the thing that you're leaving out, is that when people were disagreeing with you in the call, yeah, there were ad homs, or like, sorry, not ad homs, there were insults, but you're saying that they were ad homs, but people weren't calling you stupid in place of an argument. Wicked Supreme, Ruminate, Steven engaged with all of your arguments for a long time, disagreed with them, and then yeah, they got in their snipes and their spicy little memes on the side or whatever. And
Okay, so
you're
let
focusing just
me
on that, but they also disagreed with you empirically.
Okay, you can do. And by the way, if Supreme, Mind Waves, you and Sherry each took turns within like 2 minutes, and you're like, Connor, I understand this is your hypothesis, but I think your hypothesis is incorrect. Here's my hypothesis, and this is why I believe my theory is stronger than yours. We wouldn't have a fucking fight where I called somebody a cunt, right? We probably would have just had a conversation about the ideas. The reason why I got so fucking triggered and the reason why I was yelling at people is because I was being treated like I had a fucking sub 80 IQ. So, for instance, when I said that, people who work for the intelligence agencies, people who work for the three-letter agencies, they're above average. Do you think, and Destiny and Supreme assigned me the position that I think every single person who works for three-letter agencies is Jason Bourne? Do you feel like that's a fair read of an argument that I would forward based off of my professional experience?
I felt like that was what you were saying.
But you were
suggesting
that there was like you were
So-
suggesting that they
Mhm.
were across the board or on average that they were going to be pretty significantly educated and tapped into kind of people, when that's not really true. There's a lot of people who
Okay.
don't fit the
Okay, if
description.
you work for a three-letter agency, there's like a 95% chance that you have a 4-year degree. I'm pretty sure that's only like 25 to 35% of the population. If you
No,
work as a
you
door
said
kicker, excuse
DHS,
me,
dude. You said DHS,
the
and
Department
DHS
of
includes
Homeland Security, the Department of
yes, which
Homeland
includes
Security,
TSA.
including
Do
the
you think
Coast
the
Guard.
average Do you think the average TSA employee has a 4-year degree from a university?
Do you think that I think that Wicked Supreme, who's a part of the intel agencies, that is a part
You
of what
didn't
I'm
answer my
describing? Do you
question.
think?
You didn't
No,
answer my
I'll answer your
question.
question. I will answer your question when you answer my question, or I'll answer your question as soon as I'm done asking you my question. Do you think that I think that Wicked Supreme, who's a part of what I'm describing, is Jason Bourne? Do
No,
you
but
think
you were
that I think
suggesting
that hold
no.
on? Do you think that I think that he can do parkour and karate chop people in the fucking face and shoot guns and disassemble them in his fucking sleep, and he speaks 6 languages and he gets on fucking planes like to globetrot the world? Do you think that that's what I was saying?
We have no evidence
No.
he doesn't.
Okay, I think this can be fixed easily.
Correct.
Counterpoints. I think what you were saying was that a person that's going to work in an intelligence agency is probably like a cut above to some degree of like someone else, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know how somebody wouldn't instantly concede that.
So,
Well, the
but
TSA
the problem, I think, what became the problem is that you were then using that and then jumping to the fact of like, well, this would mean that they're going to have an ability or a willingness to engage in some sort of malfeasance, because they didn't like Trump. And the point was, well, that's not going to happen because there's legislation that's going to stop that, and a person's own morals is going to prevent.
Yeah, which doesn't, and then also saying that they
Wait.
have an ambivalent morality is a weird argument, but okay.
Okay.
Well, why even
Yeah,
push
the
that?
Hatch Act covers nothing that I was talking about.
Okay.
So,
Covers nothing.
Connor, but then the other question is, if you're willing to entertain this possibility, why not the other alternative, which is that the FBI, you could spin a hypothesis based on the available evidence that we have, that the FBI was looking to meddle in the 2020 election on Trump's behalf,
Biden's behalf,
kind of
but yeah.
well, kind of like how you could make the argument that they did in 2016 when they announced just days before the election that they were reopening the investigation into Secretary Clinton, and it was also led by a Republican at the time. So that helped Trump in 2016. You could spin some sort of conspiracy theory that happened in 2020, that Hunter Biden's dick pics wouldn't be sufficient to tank his father's campaign, but perhaps a scandal involving social media companies and suppression of evidence that might do it. So it's not that you're biased. Everyone's biased, but it's that it seemed like you honed in to this particular narrative when there's a more probable story that the FBI engaged in good faith, or if you want to exclude that the FBI was trying to meddle on Trump's behalf, but you ruled that out too. Just you assume that they hate Trump and that they're biased for the Democrats. I don't know if there's any evidence of that, especially when
There's a meme that I saw in the past month that I like in particular. So it's like,
please
Lord
please don't quote memes. This is disastrous. CounterPoints. I see it happening in real time in front of me. This is a disaster. Don't quote a fucking meme. What are you doing?
Do it. Quote the meme. Quote the meme.
Okay.
I'm being self-deprecating.
Quote the meme with my blessing. Be careful. Go on.
Thank you. Thanks, Dad.
Finally, some evidence. Woo.
So the meme is it's a Lord Farquaad from Shrek pointing and laughing, and the paranoid schizophrenic has found a pattern, and he's fucking like laughing at the person, right? And this is obviously a response tweet when somebody is going out on a limb and you're just making fun of them for being fucking schizo, right? I can completely concede that like it's possible for me to be smoking a joint on my back patio and to come up with like, well, what is it? Mueller and Trump beefed for 2 years during the Russian investigation, and the FBI had the Hunter Biden laptop for 10 months prior to the election, and on top of that, they released the warning to social media companies about basically Russian disinformation right before October, and during October the Hunter Biden story came out. And all of the social media companies have basically come out and said the reason why they suppressed the story in the first place is because they got a general heads up from the from the three-letter agencies. As a result, they thought that this was the Russian disinfo, and they suppressed it. Okay, like I could see like my own schizophrenic logic following through on that, particularly if I'm baked, right? And I could be totally fucking wrong, right? I could be totally fucking wrong. But if I was in, I don't know, Washington, D.C., as an elected representative, and there's even the accusation that three-letter agencies and social media companies were working together in order to suppress speech in violation of like the spirit of the First Amendment, if not the law of the First Amendment, you better goddamn believe I would be subpoenaing phones and computers left, right, and fucking center, personal and public, to see whether or not there was any merit to it. And just because I'm not in Washington, D.C., and I don't have subpoena power and I can't research this, doesn't mean I can't bring up my fucking schizophrenic thoughts online and fight people about them.
Well,
which I don't feel
problem,
like is...
though. Like
sure.
The problem is you're doing it in front of thousands of people. And so...
and I'm taking my dog pile...
Well,
I'm taking my dog pile as I should.
Down when you're working with a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Shut the shit down. Why does he have a legal obligation to shut down the hypothesis about whether or not the three-letter agencies and the fucking...
He doesn't have a legal obligation. He has an obligation.
Or a moral. Why does he have a moral obligation?
He has a legal obligation to... Not legal. He has an obligation...
A moral?
To... Yeah, sort of. To his audience to not allow something unsubstantiated that's highly speculative off of circumstantial evidence that could move in the direction of a pretty grand conspiracy across multiple agencies.
This bugs the fucking... The reason why this bugs the piss out of me is because if you just look back like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, 200 years, we have constant examples of nepotistic people acting in cahoots in ways that are like moderately defensible, doing fucked up shit. Like I can go back to Iraq. I can go back to weapons of mass destruction. I can go back to the 80s with the Iran-Contra affair. I can go back to John F. Kennedy greenlighting the assassination of the president of Vietnam.
I just want to cut in really quickly and say, listen, mate, I agree that sometimes stuff that seems tremendous, conspiratorial, turns out to be true. But for every conspiracy theory that turns out to be true, there's another fucking 10 that are complete bullshit, you know?
So how do you figure
Or
out the
another
truth?
100.
Do you figure out the truth by being like, oh well, I got the documents from Twitter, and I can't see any evidence of any wrongdoing, therefore
Well,
everything's fine. Is
I
that how
think
you approach reality?
sure.
Is like just if
Okay,
if information is
okay.
presented. Hold on, real quick. I'm being a
Yeah,
dick.
yeah, okay.
If like information is just like foisted upon you, it's just like presented to you in a fucking slop trough, and like that's just like
Right.
what you gobble up, and you're like, well, it's in front of me, so that's the only thing that exists.
Okay.
Like, is
the
that a good
reality
way to
is-
fucking go after
and
reality?
as difficult as this is, because I understand there's a lot of like disinterest and a lot of contention with that institutions. You have to somewhat rely on institutions to function as they should. And if they're not functioning as they should, you use democracy to try and fix that in some way. Otherwise, we end up at like a revolution or something, right? Because the reality is, for example, most recently, there were like the CIA black sites, right? There was like a question mark over that. There was then the legislator and stuff, they looked into it and they investigated it. Obviously, the CIA pushed back and there was some stuff that was redacted. But, at least somewhat, there was some sense of like, okay, the CIA black sites did exist and the government thinks they were probably bad, right? So I think that like that's a case where, was it perfect? No, but it was something at least. And I think you've got to look to institutions to act as a check and balance on this kind of stuff that's happening, right?
No, sure, but this is actually like this would actually be like the perfect analogy though, where if in this situation, like the government came out, like the CIA came back, and we didn't have access to social media or photographs or leaks or anything like that, and the CIA investigated itself, and they're like, well, we investigated ourselves and we did nothing wrong. In this like line of argumentation, I would be the person raising a fucking eyebrow and being like, well, we do have this report from Pakistan that people were taken to these fucking black sites and were held by their shoulders until they started sharing information. And a CIA operative was in the same base at the same time, which we fucking know that they did this, by the way. So as a result, I think the United States is using contractors from other countries in order to torture third country nationals because they know they have no legal obligation, and there's countries that they know that they can do this. And then the argumentative equivalent from you guys would be, well, you don't have the pictures, and on top of that, that report is speculative, and on top of that, the government said they did nothing wrong. So as a result, where's your evidence?
So okay, but here's the problem: is that you need to rely on institutions somewhat to get evidence, or you have good.
You
independent...
think I'm an American imperial apologist?
I've literally said one fucking sentence. Okay, listen, mate. I'm trying to do right by you. I don't want this to turn into a dog pile. Okay, I want other people to speak up. All right. Okay.
Come get it straight, Raid. I like you more now.
So,
one thing.
wait. Let me just finish my point. All I'm trying to say is that if you've got a suspicion or a hunch about something, you rely on institutions, good independent investigative journalism to find evidence of what's going on, and then you look, go from the evidence, right? Now, look, if you want to just, come up with like conspiracies, or maybe not conspiracies, but just your idea about what's happening, that's fine. But then without evidence, it's kind of like, well, you could say anything about anything. You need to have evidence to back up your claims. And maybe your frustration is not having the resources to do so. But yeah, it would be a case of looking into it in more detail, etc. Right.
The mini pesto, I will try to go from block to block to block of like logical inference and publicly available information to support my theory, right? And then if people at the end of it, if they want to say, it's possible, but I think that Destiny's version of events or everybody else's version of events is more likely, but I at least see the logic behind it, that's a perfectly fine fucking walk away for it. And also if it's like, okay, Connor's not totally fucking retarded. Like that's all I need.
Connor, before I leave, I want to just touch one more thing that you said earlier, okay?
Sure.
Like 30 minutes ago, which is when you were talking about the broader point of how the shoe is on the other foot. That was another part of the initial tweet that Chud brought up, and you said that this is in reference to now the dominant ethos on Twitter has now changed hands to more right wing sphere because of Elon Musk, and you said something to the effect of that this is a problem of the left's own making. I just want to push back on this because this is something else that I think, I can't speak for Destiny, but my gut check, my vibe check is this is partially what informs his frustration. Is again, there's some kind of overlap there with the broader right-wing narrative that, number one, like we talked about, that conservatives are saying that they've been banned wholesale or suppressed wholesale on Twitter because they're conservative. And then this other thing, which is this idea that censorship is some sort of like left-wing construct, and it's just not true. The fact of the matter is, like, I could make the argument very easily that this situation is a problem of the rights making, because which is the wing of politics, and which political party has been more in favor for decades of business deregulation, letting companies do whatever the hell they want, employing, engaging in at-will employment, fewer worker protections, the right to refuse service. Those are conservative notions. I could easily make the argument that you all on Twitter have been hoisted by your own petard for years, because you've basically advocated, or your side of the aisle has advocated, for a world in which companies, including social media companies, can do whatever the hell they want. And now when the social pattern starts to skew left, it's like, oh shit, we unshackled the beast and now we're being mauled by it. So number one, I would remind you of that. You need to take that into consideration. But the second thing is...
I do, and I will admit to being hoisted by my own petard, but I'll listen to your second point.
Well, and the second thing is, I'm just curious, what do you think should happen next? So if your thesis is correct, and the power has been traded back and forth, and right now it's in the hands of a right-wing idiot like Elon Musk, who, for all his business acumen, is very unsophisticated politically, has some of the dumbest political takes I've ever seen from a human being, certainly someone that successful. What do you think the next step is?
Okay, so if I was dictator for a day is how I'm going to answer this, while knowing that this is just not feasible at all in our political environment, okay? What I think should happen is we should really sit down and look at the way that we have discourse online versus discourse IRL, and what are the limits of speech, and how do we interact with dangerous ideas. And we try to come up with like the principled ways in which you could engage with like ethno-nationalism, fascism, trans-exclusionary radical feminism, all these like contentious ideas, flat earth, or whatever the fuck you want, right? Like, how do we let these discussions be had while protecting vulnerable people from getting hurt or killed? Because that's constantly what we're talking about on the left, right?
There's another element that I think is important too, and this is going to sound weird coming from me, but it's also Twitter's bottom line and these companies' bottom lines, right? Because the reason they do it is to make a profit. They need to run adverts. Some of these stuff just doesn't combine well with adverts. So you've got to factor that in somewhere as well, unless you have a completely like free at the point of service, government provided, communications, social media tool.
Correct. And then so the way that I factor that in is, I think that this is like a social cultural expectation that if Twitter allows contentious discourse on its platform, or if YouTube allows contentious discourse on its platform, that's like a moral reflection upon the institution that's providing the platform, not on the person who's saying it. I think that if it was like legally enshrined, where the government says, social media companies are now the new public square. Here are the legal limits to your behavior on these places. This is how you can talk about, dangerous ideas. But once you start to brook into this territory, we're going to start clamping down on you. Here's the new rule set in line with, our expectations of social media companies. And here's how we can kind of like allow social media companies to look after their bottom line, blah, blah, blah. I think that sets like a new stage and new foundation for public discourse. Well, hold on.
Wait, sorry.
Company, because
I'll
the
listen.
point is, if you're advertising on something that has a like hostile message toward people that could be a large segment of your customer base, you don't want your ad to show up on that. And so inevitably what happens is these for-profit companies that are advertising on these platforms, they're saying, I don't want my ads showing up on spaces that have language that single out and attack swaths of my customer base. And so that's where they have
this is where we get into like 230 reform, and are you a publisher or a platform, and are social media companies a new thing? And by the way,
it doesn't, because it all has to do with making money off of it. You can't make money off of it if the language on there is selecting and
could, if everybody was forced to take it or leave it, you absolutely could.
What? No.
If there was
okay, if there's a there's Nazi content on Twitter, and there's an advertiser that's trying to tap into a broad swath of the population for a customer base, which includes Jewish people, well, that does harm to their actual brand and whether or not people are going to buy their product, particularly Jewish people that they want to tap into in that market, including everybody else, right?
So let's run this hypothetical, okay? So a Jewish person is So a Jewish person
Oh,
is
man.
scrolling Twitter, right? They're
Yeah.
scrolling and they see somebody who is like, turns out that actually Jews are manipulative, evil fucks who are trying to take over the planet, and they want to bang your kids or something like that. And then you're saying if they continue to scroll on the news feed and they see Clorox bleach, they're gonna take their like rage out on Clorox.
No, branding is everything, right? It's about psychology and it's about what is suggested to people. You start associating a brand with the toxic anti-Semitic shit you see on a site, you're going to be like, I don't want that brand. It's a psychology thing. These things aren't conscious things that people go and say that to
So
themselves. This is something that bakes into you over time as you get exposure to it. Branding is all about that. It's all about
yeah,
psychology.
so what I'm saying is you would make the playing field level. Where basically all social media companies have to abide by a certain level of terms of service that we deal good for like the public. And you guys keep bringing up monetization because it's going to appeal to my capitalist instincts. At this
No,
point,
it's just
my
about survival of the
It's just
platform. It
because
has
that's
nothing
how
to do
these
with whatever your
platforms
beliefs are.
function. It's nothing to do.
Yeah.
It's a material
They-
reality.
Yes,
you
just a
can
material
you
reality.
can make a fair playing field and people compete in them. So basically here's my thing though is I feel like the right has severely fucked up. The reason why you didn't hear me pushing back on Ruminate at all is because I feel like this deregulation, Reaganite, everything is fair in the market bullshit. I think it's destroyed our social fabric. I literally look at the right and I am fucking appalled by them. I'm repulsed by them. I think they're fucking evil in a large degree. But then I look at the fucking left and I see a whole bunch of perverse incentives where they speak to like my goals, but I think their means are dog shit. And so I have no real political tribe to turn to. All I can do is fight with the right as best I can. So really, we could have this conversation. So for instance, if you guys want to set up a panel, how should social media companies interact? Like, how do we further social discourse when it comes to controversial ideas with, in respect to the First Amendment, but also in respect to the financial needs of social media companies? You want to sit down and you want to have a panel about that and shoot the shit and see if we can figure out all of society's problems? I am down. I would love to fucking do that content. But at the same time, what I would like is if I was a participant in that content, if I say, hey, let's make a even playing field, then you say, Connor, are you fucking retarded? Like, did you wake up this morning on the wrong side of the bed? Did you fucking hit yourself? Are you, like, what's your professional experience? Are you a piece of shit? Like, I would prefer to avoid that. And rather than that, talk about the idea itself and whether or not it has merit.
Well, that's fair, but I think that stuff also happened as people started getting, a little overwhelmed by the lengthy conversation and what was being said. So I think initially it was pretty good faith from what I saw, and there weren't too many attacks. That
I have
really
issues
happened
with
after
your
like 30
characterization,
plus
but I
minutes
think we
in.
all have our sympathies.
Well,
So
like overall, there's a bit of a problem that we have in this space where people kind of get dogpiley and stuff, and things turn into memes and shit, and they start bagging on the person who they think is saying the most absurd thing. That's definitely a thing that happens here, and I think that you were the recipient of too much of that. But it seemed to me like they were engaging in pretty good faith early on, and where it really got bad, which is what I started thinking. I was thinking, man, this conversation should have ended ages ago because there wasn't any productivity. You guys were going in
True.
loops, and you probably should have just
Trade
ended
raid,
it.
throwing fucking grenades in the room again.
You should
So
have just ended it
I'm
because
just-
it just got antagonistic after a while, and that
Look,
was only going to get
sure,
worse on a platform.
I'll listen to Chud, but I do want to make a point.
No, by all means. I just want to say, like, I'm working hard to make sure we don't just end up. I want everyone to have a chance to speak to you because this is a big thing, and we're just trying to be chill about it. But I mean, maybe make your point, and then I want to hear from Straight Raid because I think they've got something to add.
Can I just dip out before he goes? I appreciate it, guys. It's been nice talking to you. I want to say a special shout out to my favorite simp, Aaron. Aaron, keep the faith. Be nice to Connor, okay?
Nice
Can you do
reverse
that?
Uno there. All right.
Okay.
Get back
That's
in
all
your
right.
cage.
All right,
I
bye,
like
guys.
her. I like her. Nice. All right. Well, I like
I'm gonna go
Aaron
too.
more because she made her
I'll
shit.
see you guys.
Okay, catch you
Love you,
later.
Star.
Cheers,
See ya.
bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
All right. So the point being, there's going to be 2 points to the manifesto. I think people are going to find probably a good chunk of it boring, and I think they'll find a good chunk of it relevant. So a part of it is going to be why I believe what I believe, outlining my view without anybody being able to push back against me, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be like a good chunk of it. And like, why I still contend that my worldview is possible, if not probable. Then the other chunk about it is going to be, I'm going to call out the individual moments where I got like emotional and fucking pissed, where I don't agree with you that the first 30 minutes were charitable. I felt like they were digs early on, and I just fucking, bull scene red, I just charged into it.
It was a dig that started the whole conversation, but I don't think that means that everything that came after that was necessarily bad faith. I think Steven just made a side comment, and he didn't actually expect that you were going to take it seriously and engage, but you did. And then from there, he was just, from there, it was a conversation that maybe you could argue you weren't as prepared to have, but you engaged, and everybody seemed to think that you were, since you said, actually, I did go back and I read the Twitter files. I spoke with my editor, and they agreed with me, and they can explain to you how the algorithm can differentiate between liberal opinions and conservative opinions, which is laughably untrue. And he came on and explained that. And then from there, people were just disagreeing with your points and pushing back and trying to debunk what you were saying because you didn't actually have evidence to back up the things you were saying. I think you took it really, really personally, and there was no reason to do that, or like maybe that's uncharitability on your
Not
part to
perceptible
assume
to
that
you.
people,
That wasn't perceptible to you. I'll highlight it. But anyways, listen, I'm neurodivergent and I'm a minor, so.
I mean, listen, I think that throughout that, like, and the thing is, it wasn't explicit at first. It was little jabs here, Mindwaves had a couple of comments, and I feel like I'm singling out Mindwaves. It's just a bit harsh. Like, everyone was fucking chipping in a little bit. It was like everyone was taking a little bite out of you, a little bite out of you, a little bite out of you. Right? That's what I thought.
Coming from the Reverie. Can we admit that I'm coming from the Reverie roundtable, which I think is basically like the rhetorical equivalent of a Burger King knife fight? Can we admit that like my brain has been forever altered by that fucking debate?
The reason why I'm surprised that you were kind of being somewhat fragile about this, in my opinion, okay, is because you came on the night before saying that conservatives were being oppressed because you guys can't, maybe I shouldn't throw you in that camp. I don't know if you're interested in discussing these things, the JQ and race realism and anti-vax talking points, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, it's like some of those discussions are necessarily uncivil, especially like the Jewish question. Like, baked into the premise of the Jewish question is literally anti-Semitism. There's just no way around it. So if you're championing people's ability to be able to freely talk about this, to be able to freely okay, but there's a difference between, like, some of these conversations about race are not as innocuous or neutral as you're trying to say that they are. You're like, people just want to civilly discuss, Black people's inferiority. Okay, can you understand how some of that is just on its face inflammatory? So it's like, and fine, I'm here for these spicy conversations. You're talking to somebody who's the fucking queen of talking about all of this shit, okay? I'm here for it. But it's like, if you can handle civil discourse surrounding the fucking Jewish question and race realism, I would have thought that you could be able to take some quips about like the hall monitor and stuff like that. I was genuinely surprised that you took it as personally, okay? Like, if you're here for race realism combos.
Are you saying he should have been less of a pussy? Is that what you're saying? Say it plainly.
That's what she said. That's what she said. And by the way, I agree with her. So that's fine.
Like, overall, I don't think,
fair enough.
like I like things, I like conversations to be civil, but we're on an entertainment platform, so there's kind of like, even if it's not conscious, there's at least an unconscious incentive to be inflammatory and to joke and to poke at people and shit like that. That shit just kind of happens, right? But
yeah, this was my excuse to Mr. Girl, where I was like, this is just the dynamic of the space. Yeah,
it's probably not the most healthy dynamic, especially not for a lot of people. But overall, what I think the conversation was pretty good faith with most of the contributors to the conversation, and so even though
I will try to change your mind with the manifesto. Okay.
Also, Connor, can I just say
I
that,
just
like,
went over it yesterday, by the way, and covered it on stream, so it's pretty fresh in my head. But like, honestly,
I will try to show you from my internal perspective why I disagree with you, and even if you don't agree with me at the end of the manifesto, perhaps you could at least see the logic behind my perspective.
All right, fair enough. I'll wait for it.
Okay.
If you're going to do that, Connor, are you going to... I think whenever people have these, like, the right gets deplatformed more than the left, or whatever, in these conversations, or what you'd rather have done about it, it's like people always end up going to these, like, oh, well, this would be nice, but the law would never allow it, or private companies or financial interests would have gotten away. Like, I don't know, like, do you have in your head like a good understanding of, or like an idea of how you think a platform should function, like what kind of thresholds should be met for banning someone, for example, whether it should be like, are some ideas off the table? Is it just behaviors? Is it just legal stuff? Like, do you have any opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think I would need to kind of this would be something that would need to be, as iron sharpens iron, men sharpen men, right? Or women or non-binary people. So what I think I would want to start with the premise of like, okay, what is the First Amendment in the United States, and then what are all the negative externalities of the First Amendment, like harassment, stalking, violence, doxing, like all that kind of shit. And then I would try to figure out like, well, here's these dozen subjects, and I want to try to keep the dozen subjects. I want to boil down why they're bad, right? Like, so they can hurt people, they increase bigotry, they spread malicious lies that don't hurt people, they spread malicious lies that do hurt people. And then I want to kind of boil down the variables for those like difficult to have conversations. And then what I would want to do
I'm sorry, listen, I hate interrupting you, but I just need to point something out. If you premise your terms of service on the First Amendment, you're setting up a platform for America only. You can't have a platform run in the UK if it's premised on the First Amendment because we've got different laws. You understand that, right?
But your objection like presumes that I care about the UK. So.
Well, that's what's really annoying is you can just talk about like, why not just talk about what, because no one ever does this. Why not just talk about what you personally think would be an ethically good platform rather than all this like, oh, but the financial incentives would never allow that, or the legal Section 230 cock would never do like that. Just say what you think it should be.
Sorry if I'm a little gun shy. Last time I forwarded my perspective, I basically had 6 people call me a retard for 3 hours.
It's fine. Listen, man,
if you want to have a good conversation, if you want to have a conversation about this, we could do it. But
you better have a really good, solid opinion on platforming.
All I'm saying, look, I point out.
I still need to watch your video.
Look, that's an easy dunk for you. Okay, who's dunking on who now? All I'm saying is you're accepting that you're not going to have an international platform because you can't have a platform running in another country that doesn't have the First Amendment. That's not going to work, right?
But I don't want to come your way. I want you guys to come our way.
So the UK government has got to implement the First Amendment. That just seems insane. I mean, look, if you want, but this is the whole point. You're then moving away, but you're then moving away from what Loner Box is saying of having like an understanding. You might as well just come on and say, I want to click my fingers and magically have the world that fits what I want, and that's fine. But then that's the kind of thing that this is the leftoid logic as well of like, oh yeah, well everything should work how I want, housing should be free, blah blah blah. It's a bit fantastical. You know what
but like, no. Chud, wait. Sorry. Chud is actually counter is actually kind of going a little bit more in my direction because I don't care if like someone has a stance on deplatforming that's probably like going to take a really long time to put in place because like because I think the problem is that like social pressure does influence the way platforms work sometimes against their own interests anyway, right? Like I think like Facebook originally had strikes on like Charlie Kirk and Diamond and Silk because they shared viral disinformation, but the executives removed it. Or I think even with Alex Jones, like it's quite, and that purge of 2018 and 19 on YouTube, it's quite arguable that YouTube lost money doing that because BitChute made a big gain. Alex Jones actually has started making more money off YouTube than he did when he was on YouTube. So like, yeah, the social pressure can have an influence there. It's not just like private companies and like legal shit. So yeah.
Well, and Chud, if I could say, like, sure. No offense to the rest of the fucking world. But I feel like America is probably the cultural leader of the rest of the world. Like, entertainment, movies, blah, blah, blah. Commercialism, consumerism, fast food, propaganda, all that. So if we had social media platforms, if we took like the major social media platforms, we like created like a more open window for conversation, and we said, this is how we're going to deal with controversial subjects. Here's the lines. If you disobey the lines, we're not going to care if you get banned. But if we came up with that, and it was more, EU, I know. The EU has more laws.
America has to acquiesce all the time to what EU says.
But what
product?
The EU. We're conceding to
the EU.
No, they fuck Google. The concessions to the fucking EU. No, all right, sorry. I'm about to meme. I shouldn't meme.
No, meme away, mate.
So basically, what I would like, dictator for a day, is if we say, tough shit. These are our rules, and you can decide whether or not you want to be like China and fucking firewall this shit and force your citizens to go on to black sites in order to access Twitter, because we're not going to be enforcing European fucking morality on American speech. That's what I would like. And then the Europeans could have a serious conversation where, well, we have a completely different conception of the limits of speech in our block. So do we suppress our citizens by blocking them from American social media, or do we just acquiesce and say, enter at your own risk?
You are a terrible capitalist, Connor. I am disappointed.
Yeah, listen, mate, look.
If there's any Republican I like, it's Teddy Roosevelt. It's bull moose. I want to fight everybody all the time.
Yeah, bull moose.
No,
But I
that's
have
fine.
some respect for that. I get that.
Loner
Who
Box,
needs
obviously,
capitalism
Eddie's
when you
based.
control everything?
Okay, listen, I brought Evan in because he's a conservative person, and it was the only person who was willing to come in and talk. So, Evan, what have you got to say about this? Go on, let's see if you can help out here.
This is the we're talking about the give me a quick synopsis again. I didn't watch the full video.
The cringe of forwarding the fact that
the dogpiling thing.
No, the dogpiling, but also the cringe of forwarding the idea that the FBI slow rolled the Hunter Biden investigation, and the cringe of believing that the FBI and the DHS forewarned social media companies that there would be misinformation coming out in October, and then the Hunter Biden story happened to come out, and believing there was some level of intentionality. That's the cringe I'm being accused of, which I accept.
So Chud also got me on that when we talked the last time when I was brought in, that I said that there was a lot of political ideology within the current FBI that was basically trying to attack different groups that would be considered right-leaning or right extremist. I wouldn't have a problem if it was just right extremists, but they group them in all together. It's easier to sort them out that way.
Not to mention Trump beefing with the FBI for 2 years. Not to mention
that doesn't also help the fact that
not to mention Mueller. Not to mention
the FBI has a lot of reason to fuck over Trump. And
most institutions do.
If I'm not
okay, but
mistaken,
just because there's a lot of reasons to do something doesn't mean that it's happening. That's the whole point.
Wait.
I agree with you.
Isn't activity in both of these three layers like very siloed anyway? Like you have to go through like loads of layers of whatever the word is, just like authorization to do that, like across two agencies.
Bureaucracy.
So for instance,
bureaucracy,
this is something that I brought up that I almost got like an immediate concession from like an administrator in one of, not specifically these organizations, but they were like, look at the bureaucracy. And, couldn't it just be that, it wasn't intentionally slow rolled? It was just, the nature of the investigation. And I was like, yeah, but doesn't that just make the entire opportunity that much easier, where a single mid-level bureaucrat could be like, oh, Steve's a fucking incompetent douchebag. I should probably have 5 guys on the Hunter Biden investigation because it's a significant matter of political importance, but I'm going to assign Steve. And Steve can figure it the fuck out by himself. And nobody can say that I'm not doing my job, because I'm doing my job. It's just one guy in a fucking desk reviewing the laptop.
Well,
Doesn't that make it easier?
There are checks and balances in place. That was one thing I actually wanted to correct you on earlier when you said this. If the CIA investigated itself and found nothing, the thing is, the FBI would do that investigation into the CIA. So there are checks and balances. It's not a perfect system, but there are enough checks and balances in place to where if some kind of cross agency collaborative like conspiracy was going on like this, that this would be discovered. There would be evidence of it. It would be reported on. It may not currently be declassified to the point where we would get to know about it, but it's something that would be noticed by a number of people, right?
The longer, and maybe this is just me getting old, the longer that I'm a part of private and public institutions, I'm like a very idealistic person. Like I like to think about the ways that things should be, or how we talk about our moralities and principles. I like to aspire to them. I like to do all that kind of shit. But the older I get, and the more institutions I've been a part of, and the more I've worked in those institutions, I realize that like self-interest, nepotism, and opinion, and like fickleness seems to influence a lot. And I've had like political experiences in law enforcement, in the military, in the private sector, where nepotism and self-interest ruled over all of the principles. And the reasons why everybody kept quiet, including me, technically in the industry that I'm a part of right now, is because that like there's a perverse incentive to do so. You get to keep your job, you get to keep your paycheck. You kind of don't like the person who's being fucked over anyways. So there's all these reasons to keep quiet that don't have anything to do with some kind of like broad conspiracy where the people who are involved text message you and say, "Hey, bro, can you keep this quiet?" Like that doesn't happen. Everybody just kind of keeps quiet because it's in their self-interest.
Well,
So
wouldn't
there's
that be the case then that like rather than FBI and DHS, even if this did happen, it would be like a very small number of people in each organization that did that, right? Because
I literally think it could be accomplished with 3 or 4 people. Yeah.
okay, and that could get through like the checks and balances on both through both and across both institutions.
Yeah.
How about what would you if you were a gambling person? What odds would you give that? Because I would give that like maybe like 1,000,000 to 1. But
I would give it like So which one? That the FBI gave social media companies forewarning that the Hunter Biden, like not that the Hunter Biden story was coming out, but there was misinformation coming out, and then it ended up being the Hunter Biden files, or that an investigator looking at Hunter Biden's laptop or an administrator in the FBI said basically like they underpowered, understaffed, and deprioritized the investigation in order to help out Biden. Which one?
The latter.
The latter I put at like fucking 60-40 straight up. Like yeah,
Whoa.
1,000,000 to 1 I think is I don't know how you look at history and think it's 1,000,000 to 1.
Like haven't federal investigators already said that they have evidence to bring charges to Biden over his taxes, Hunter Biden?
Are they going to? Does anybody care if they do?
I mean, I think only recently they've said that they have evidence to bring charges, right? So I feel like it looks like something's happening to him.
I mean,
If they had evidence to bring charges, wouldn't they have already brought the charges?
Have they brought charges?
I don't think so. But I'm saying, like, making it to say that we have evidence, like they probably would have just done it.
Wait, Evan's got something to say. This is a big one. Go on, Evan.
Hunter Biden did leave a gun outside of school, and he still hasn't actually gotten press charges for any of that yet. So
that sounds kind of crazy.
He's done crack on camera, banged a bunch of hookers on camera,
and like, nothing has been investigated.
Camera.
Wait, hang on a sec.
$400,000 he didn't disclose on his taxes on camera.
What would you investigate in regards to the crack thing?
If he's on video doing fucking crack cocaine and then you've arrested him and you find possession of crack cocaine.
We don't know. It could have been America. It would be illegal.
Let's be real. He was in Thailand.
Okay,
wait,
so
how'd you know that?
What charges would be brought against him?
How would I use this as evidence brought against him?
No, I think
Did he bring it back?
What charges would you bring against? I mean, you know, the thing is
what charges would I bring against him? Yeah. So I mean, if there was anything that was chargeable for like soliciting bribes, I would absolutely bring that shit against him. If there was tax evasion for the $400,000, I would bring that against him. And then basically I would watch him while he was stateside, and if he looks like he's buying crack or if he's going after whores, then I would arrest him then too.
Am I the only one who doesn't give a fuck what Hunter Biden gets up to with his drugs and his hookers and his cock? Like, I don't give a fuck.
Because it's American
hold on,
taxpayers who are paying it.
Well, yeah, in Straighter Aid, like, where is this money coming from? This money is
it should be
literally
my hookers and my crack.
I don't know. If somebody has a hunch that a private citizen has actually broken the law, then they should bring charges against him. Go for it. But all they have is just like effectively like kind of like slandering and like leaking all of this stuff about Hunter Biden. I really don't even know to what extent it's relevant for the public to know about this.
Look,
the pistol was found.
Here's the thing: if he's a playboy on the dime of the American people, then sure, there's something there to really complain about and be concerned about. But if not, then we're just basically trying to pry into the life of a playboy.
Oh,
pretty much.
No.
That's how I see it.
I think we shouldn't.
No. Chud, can I please?
Go on. Sure.
No, we're not.
Spoken very little, so
because he's the president's son, and part of the way that he got his Playboy money was by rubbing elbows with Chinese billionaires and with Ukrainian billionaires and saying, if you give me $200,000, I will get you an introductory meeting with the president of the United States.
At the time that all of that leaked, Joe Biden was not the president, so he was not
He was the vice
son.
president.
Oh, no, he was only marginally less powerful.
So he was connected.
You made an incorrect claim.
Now, was the connection on the dime of the taxpayers?
That's not my contention. I don't think he was a public employee. The
quid pro quo shit in Ukraine, where if he didn't fire a prosecutor who Hunter Biden was a part of, that they wouldn't give Ukraine this money,
Even
financial
even
aid.
if you drop that, because I know people have contention with that because allegedly the prosecutor had grounds to be fired, blah 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 blah. So Zonia, you're saying that if the son of the vice president of the United States or of somebody who's very high up in government says, I will, give me 200 grand, give me 400 grand, and I'll get you in a room with the president of the United States. That's not like fraudulent bribery, nepotism. It's not anything that you care
So
about.
if it's Connor, if it's nepotism that you care about, go after Trump.
Done, and that should be addressed.
Okay. Well,
Okay. Hold on. No. Straight Away just brought up a really awesome point. You're right. The reason why I didn't fight this even more aggressively on the fucking fucking dog pile panel is because I think the reasons why the institutions would look the other way on Biden is because Trump is probably 10 times worse in almost every respect.
Of course. That's what I'm saying. Like all this freak out over Hunter Biden. He's like one private citizen. And it's not good or whatever, but like
that's why when Destiny said get Trump's dick out of your ear, I took it extremely personal because part of my argument is contingent on the fact that everybody has a reason to try to go after Trump, and Biden is the better choice.
Here's the thing.
My argumentation can hinges on that.
I think there's like a reasonable position in here somewhere. I think that everyone in chat would agree that Hunter Biden has benefited from some form of nepotism, right? I think everyone would agree with that, right?
Yeah, he's definitely gotten connections through it and such.
But is it criminal?
Oh, exactly. So, okay, you're making my points for me. I'm letting the woman speak over me. And another one.
Sorry.
Or is it enough to tank Biden? Like,
this is my point: is can we make strong connections from Hunter Biden to Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden using his office to explain? Right. And that's the problem. Yeah. If someone were to say, I think we should investigate that, I'm like, yeah, I'm all up for that. Investigate to your heart's content. I'm fully for that. But then the problem is the arguments are made ahead of that to suggest that Hunter Biden has definitely done something wrong and it's linked to Joe Biden. And therefore, that's where it gets fucking messy.
There's two problems. Yeah, so there's two problems with the investigation. So number one, basically, like he says, oh yeah, and remember, I need 10% to kick up to the big guy or whatever. That's like alluding to Joseph Biden supposedly, but at the same time, what is just as likely, I'm proving I don't have conspiracy brain here, is just as likely the big guy was fucking Hunter Biden's nose, right? He was lying about whether or not he would get the introductions in order to get money so he could smoke crack and bang hookers, right? So Joe Biden could have been completely unaware of everything his son was doing, and the story would still be the same. The other problem with it is that Hunter Biden dropped off the laptop and basically dropped off the laptop, called him multiple times, tried to give it back, et cetera, et cetera. He never got the laptop back. The guy supposedly called the FBI a few times. They ignored it too for a few months, blah, blah, blah. He makes a copy, gives it to the Trump campaign because he has Republican sympathies, and then eventually he gets it turned into the FBI. Well, part of the problem with the Biden disclosures is that specifically when it comes to the Trump campaign, there is like digital forensic evidence that there was stuff that was created and sent after it was in the possession of the computer repairman. And also there's like evidence of like tampering after the fact and all that kind of shit. So what ended up happening was the Trumps, because we don't know this, I'm not a digital forensics guy. I have no fucking idea. But there's enough muddy footprints in the crime scene that the cops are basically saying, we don't know what's real and we don't know what's fake. And so that's what they're saying, at least.
So, but this is the thing.
Is that last bit you just said, do you think any of that's objectionable?
No, but but for instance, if I was working for the FBI or if I was a supervisor, or if I was somebody else, if I was involved in DC, I would be like, okay, let me talk to your digital forensics guy because I want to know what's real and what's fake. And I want that to be available to the public. Because right now it's also it's opaque. You guys are saying that it's opaque through just the FBI just doing what it normally does. I'm saying it's opaque because people are self-interested, and if they can slow roll the story and make it muddy and gross and weird and nobody really gives a fuck about it anyways, and if you can classify it culturally as just people want revenge porn on Hunter Biden, then nobody gives a fuck and everybody moves away from the story, even if it is criminal.
But I'm saying, sure, investigate it, and if there's like some Republicans have got some level of power to engage in some level of investigation, surely, unless I'm being totally naive, right?
Like no, they only recently just got power to do that.
Well, then go ahead and do it. Like, you know, I'm all for transparency. I think, you know, investigate as much as is needed. If the FBI do, that's fine. But then you're filling in all of these gaps that should be filled in with an actual investigation and actual scrutiny.
There needs to be a basis for it. There has to be a basis for it when he's a private citizen. And I feel like you're saying that what's been leaked so far justifies an inquiry into his private data and personal life that would be unconstitutional.
It wouldn't be unconstitutional because
you should have the evidence first. You can't say we have a hunch that you're guilty. Now you should give us access to everything. We're gonna subpoena you and then we'll indict you.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you already need to have the criminal evidence before you even.
They have the criminal evidence. They have it.
And also, we're conflating like Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, right? The issue would be that Joe Biden is connected in some way. That's what would need to be investigated primarily by the government. Is Joe Biden engaging in some malfeasance?
No. This is weird. So just because it doesn't go back to Joe Biden, we can't investigate Hunter for criminal activity, including fraud.
But that's different. You could, but the thing is, Hunter. No, let me wait. You could say that Hunter Biden is guilty of a crime, and it could have nothing to do with Joe Biden. But conservatives are constantly trying to invoke this connection, right, to say, oh, Joe Biden's involved, but you could have it where Joe Biden's not involved at all and Hunter Biden is guilty of everything you're saying, but Joe Biden's got no awareness of it, right? But conservatives blur that all the time. Yeah, but conservatives fucking blur it all the time, and that's why people sort of, act up when these things are spoken about, because there's not that clarity, and it's a constant attempt to besmirch Joe Biden, even though, as far as I know, there's no evidence that he's involved that has been uncovered or anything like that.
I don't. I gave you the one piece of evidence that alluded to Joe Biden being involved, and I gave you a plausible explanation for how it could still be true that he wasn't involved at all. Where Hunter was exaggerating his relationship with his own father in order to defraud other people out of money.
Okay.
I explained that. So you can say, and this is part of the thing. I get it. Conservatives are pieces of shit. They exaggerate. They're hyperbolic. They don't read. I get it.
The word defrauding isn't really applicable there. It's effectively bribing, not defrauding.
Sure. I would love to start looking at federal statutes, but nobody pays my paychecks to look at statutes anymore. So I can comment on it as somebody who's involved in the Twitch and YouTube political space, but I probably will not lose sleep over it.
Okay, listen. Do you feel you've had a chance to speak your truth, CounterPoints, without getting?
I do. Okay. I do. I also feel like I was going to walk away and like try to shit talk Straighterade real quick, since she just kind of came in and she was like, "Hey, what's up? Oh yeah, I was memeing. You fell for it, you dipshit. Lols." Like I actually.
Hey, go for it. Go for it.
I love it. No,
I love Twitter it. And take it all out of me there, or right here in the call if you have something else to say to me.
Ooh.
No, I love Straighterade. I'm saying she fucking Sherry got fucking machine gunned based off of Straighterade's fucking sins. I'll make that fucking clear in the video, but I still think that was a decent shitposting and decent memery. Also, I do think it is
the record.
Sorry, go ahead.
Name is pronounced Cherry.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're saying Sherry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying Sherry to differentiate her from Cherry, Zan's editor, who I misremembered. I could have sworn to God.
I think Cherry Bread.
Right. But I think this is what happened. I think I remember Dylan Burns hanging out with his editor who moved in, who was a part of the Prime Kai drama. Y'all remember that? So I feel like I'm misremembering a stream where Dylan and somebody's gonna have to remind me of her name. Were hanging out, and they were like, "Oh yeah, she's here now. She's helping me produce. She's helping me edit, and like all this kind of stuff." And I could have sworn to God.
I think, or something like that.
I think I imagined that stream was Xander Hall and Cherry. So I think I just got it wrong. So I'm saying Sherry to differentiate from Cherry Bread TV.
I'm glad that this is okay. Wait, I'm glad you're clarifying it now. But I mean, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that professing the investigation stuff and then making a mistake like that is just going to add. It's going to make it worse for you, right?
This is. Are y'all joking?
Well, no.
No, I'm not joking. I think it's
what had already happened.
I'm not saying you've murdered anyone.
Are investigators like fucking psychic, or do they ask questions?
I'm talking about public perception,
make mistakes, and then ask more questions? Yeah,
it's democracy. It's democracy of the court of public opinion, and the people are retarded.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm gonna quote two things. All right, so it's that Indian guy who said democracy is the will of it's a government for the people, by the people, of the people, but the people are retarded.
Yes,
so it's a government of the retarded, by the retarded, and for the retarded. I'll also quote Churchill as saying that democracy is the worst form of government on the planet, except for all the other ones. So there we go.
Okay.
based.
Anyway,
Just to put, it's just something you got to keep in mind. Public opinion matters, especially in the context of something that happened, just a couple days
No.
before, right?
No, I'm gonna giga Chad right through this. I'm gonna say I don't care. I don't care that Cherry and Cherry aren't the same person. As a matter of fact, I'll just conflate them more just because it's pissing people off.
Okay, right. Is that everything? Can we wrap this up now?
Wait,
Yeah,
one
we
more
can wrap it
thing,
up.
Connor.
Mhm.
I think the things that you were complaining about related to conservatives being targeted. Technically, race realism, the JQ, anti-vaxxers. Technically, all of those are nonpartisan. The fact that conservatives discuss them more is the reason that they are being banned disproportionately, but anybody could be banned for discussing those things. If lefties on Twitter were suddenly talking about them more often, they would probably be hit with the ban more. Maybe you disagree with that, but I'm just saying that why are you even saying that that's like an intrinsically conservative position? It's not about conservative tax policy or foreign policy or fiscal policy or anything like that. You're owning that race realism, that's a conservative topic. Oh, the JQ, that's a conservative topic, which okay, I mean technically it's not, but again, that's why I disagree that conservatives are being targeted.
Straight away, I have a counterpoint, if you don't mind.
Okay, go for it.
Oh God, okay.
You're a woman.
Base giga Chad.
There we go.
And then basically we straight array, we agree, and then you're assigning me the term intrinsic, and I would say that was the same thing that Destiny did to me that frustrated the fuck out of me in the first conversation. I'm not saying it's intrinsic to conservatism. I'm not a race realist. I'm a trans inclusionary radical misogynist. I'm a little bit homophobic, but not like crazy homophobic. I'm more like homophobic, like I'm trying to think, like in a
don't
cute,
hit me
fun
with
way.
that gay shit.
You still say gay exactly. As a pejorative. Yeah.
I say gay as a pejorative, right? But I like if two dudes kiss, if they want to get married, that's fine. Then what was the other thing? I'm a little racist, but I also try to be like cute racist, not real racist. So I don't think that all of these things are intrinsic to conservatism. I still ascribe to Burkean conservatism, and on top of that, I'm trying to drag the right wing my way. I'm trying to make them civic nationalists. I'm trying to make them less homophobic. I'm trying to make them less transphobic. I'm trying to make them more understanding that a social conservative society doesn't just bloom out of anarcho-capitalism. So I'm trying to drag these people these way, but I'm getting stabbed in the fucking back because I'm insufficiently conservative and I don't suck Trump's dick. And then I'm getting stabbed in the belly because people are telling me that I'm a fucking retard because I think that there might be aligned interest in reference to some Democrats seizing power. So being a centrist fucking sucks. I don't recommend it. It's basically just getting dick kicked every day. But there's a certain element of it that is fun. There's a certain element.
Stop kicking your dick if you just came to the left.
You're the one kicking my dick.
Oh my
well, yeah, exactly. And that feels
hey,
like
I
a
kick
threat,
everyone. That's nonpartisan for me too. Okay, I will kick every man's dick. I don't give a fuck if they're a Democrat or a Republican or an anarcho-Bidenist. Okay.
Let's stop.
Wait, no, Chud, I also want to say as well, the whole race realism thing not being partisan. It kind of obviously people who are race realists are more likely to be conservative because if you start from a position of you think maybe fucking black people do what they do not because of environment or anything like that, it's personal responsibility, then the other reason why is it's in their so you can see why. But also left-wingers can discuss race realism online. It's not in the YouTube purge of 2018 they got rid of a bunch of race realism debunked videos. They got rid of the people who were touting the theory, so it's probably reasonable to say that if you're a race realist you're probably a conservative, right? Yeah.
If you want to have a conversation later on where we literally sit down and try to figure out what social media windows of discussion should be and how we could properly implement them, I would love to do a exercise on that.
Right. I just need to ask a final question before we go, and it's the big one. Okay.
Sure.
Are you going to be featured in a chapter of Mr. Girl's article about Destiny?
Probably. I did so for those of you, I've split up my content. My primary channel is Warhammer 40K. If you type in CounterPoints, I'm doing a shout out, by the way. So CounterPoints 30K, if you type that into your chat, you'll bump into all my Warhammer content. I basically break down all of the media from Games Workshop, Warhammer TV, and all the third-party animations. I think I do a pretty good job of it. I also do lore videos that people don't appreciate as much, but I also think are super high quality. That's channel number one. Channel number two is CounterPoints Coliseum. My most popular video to date is talking to Mr. Girl about the Destiny bridge burning and what he's trying to do with his investigation. It's contentious at first. It becomes better in the second half. And then I'm also going to be releasing the manifesto I'm relaunching my primary channel as just a high quality video essay channel. So there will be 3 Counterpoints channels, 40K, debates, and the essay. So yeah, I will be featured.
Okay. Anyone else want to shout themselves out?